Thank you. First of all, I'm very pleased to be here. I was very pleased to be part of the rally and the protest in Newport yesterday. And I think it was fantastic to see so many people from across Britain, and all those people from Ireland there as well, and a lot of the international speakers that we had. It's very important that when NATO meets in any part of the world, that there is alternative summits and alternative events, because there is an alternative to NATO's policy and illegal wars which have been perpetrated by NATO states. I want to first of all talk a little bit about Ireland and what's happening in Ireland at the moment. As people will know, Ireland in principle at least is a neutral country, and that has been a long-standing tradition in Ireland going back hundreds of years. But in terms of the birth of the Irish state, it was one of the principles of that state that Ireland should have an independent foreign policy and would be a neutral state. Unfortunately, in recent years, there has been a gradual shift in Irish foreign policy, partly because of a deeper relationship with NATO and NATO countries, but also because of deeper military interventions in Europe as well, and a number of European treaties like the Nice Treaty and Lisbon Treaty, which committed Ireland to more military spending and military infrastructure and so on within Europe. The vast majority of Irish people support Irish neutrality. Despite that, in 1997, Ireland and the Irish government at the time signed us up to NATO's Partnership for Peace. And while that was happening, we were told at the time, those of us who opposed that, we were told that this was no threat to Ireland's neutrality. We were also told that all of the treaties which passed from the Nice Treaty, the Amsterdam Treaty, the Lisbon Treaty, all of those treaties had no impact on Irish neutrality. But yet in 2001, Irish airports and Shannon Airport started to be used by the American military to ferry US troops on their way to their illegal war in Iraq. 2.2 million US soldiers have passed through Shannon Airport. US military hardware and weapons have passed through Shannon Airport. Drone planes have passed through Shannon Airport. We've had torture flights which have taken off from rendition flights from Shannon Airport. So how is that consistent with a neutral state? How is that consistent with Irish neutrality? So we have seen that gradual erosion of our neutrality in recent times. And I believe that brings great shame on those governments who supported that, because the vast majority of Irish people are opposed to this. And in fact, if you look at some of the treaties, the Nice Treaty and the Lisbon Treaty, were on both of those occasions, on the first occasion, the Irish people democratically voted against those treaties because they were opposed to the militarisation of Europe. And yet when they voted no, the government came back and asked them to vote a second time because they weren't happy with the first result. So much for democracy within Europe. We also have to put this into context where we have 200 billion euro every year being spent on military spending and weapons of mass destruction across the Eurozone and in Europe. And at the same time, we have these very harsh austerity budgets which are being forced through parliaments and which are being foisted upon the working class people right across Europe, and including in Ireland as well. We've had 7 brutal austerity budgets in the south of Ireland, where we've had cutbacks to health spending, cutbacks to education spending, we have cutbacks to public sector pay, we've had massive job losses, we had very high unemployment, and yet, because of Europe, we're being asked to spend more money on military spending, and we're part of that 200 billion euro every year which is spent on purchasing and manufacturing weapons of mass destruction which are being used to kill people across the world. And that, of course, is absolutely wrong, and something that my party and many progressive left parties, independents and anti-war activists are campaigning against in Ireland. Across the world, 1.7 trillion is spent on weapons, if we include the US and Russia and all of the countries who spend huge amounts of money on military, trillions every year on weaponry and on weapons of mass destruction. And when these NATO leaders meet over the next number of days, the narrative, of course, will be the same. But thankfully, the narrative has been challenged, because if we go back to the Iraq War, we were told by Tony Blair and by George Bush at the time that the Iraq War was about weapons of mass destruction. The Iraq War was about bringing independence and peace and security to the people of Iraq. Well, if anyone looks at Iraq at the moment, it certainly isn't a peaceful country because of what's happening there. So they made the situation worse in Iraq. And they're now trying to use the same arguments to ratchet up a potential war in Syria and a potential war in Iran as well. But it's becoming more difficult for them. And it's becoming more difficult because of people like yourselves, because of people like us who are challenging their propaganda and challenging that narrative. And I think, as the Chair said, we are beginning to win the argument with the vast majority of people across Europe. What we need to do is build the anti-war movement and have greater alliances between progressive political parties in Europe and people who want an alternative to what is happening. They will also, of course, be planning potential future wars in Iran and Syria. As I said, they'll be telling us that we have an increased threat to our security because of Iraq, because of Iran, because of Afghanistan, because of Syria, because of maybe Palestine, because of Ukraine, because of Russia. The biggest threat to the security of the people in the world at the moment, of course, isn't about any of that. It's about, as I said yesterday at the rally, it's about poverty, it's about injustice, it's about hunger, it's about famine, it's about disease. And yet only a fraction of taxpayers' money is put into combating poverty. Half the world's population lives in poverty. 20 children die every minute of every day on the planet because of malnutrition, and yet we're being told that the biggest threat to world peace and to the security of the human race is coming from any of these countries which they say it's coming from. I don't remember the last time Iraq or Iran or Syria attacked Wales, or attacked England, or attacked Ireland. But I do know that NATO countries have meddled in their affairs and have created many of the problems that we have in these very countries. So I'm speaking to the converted, of course, and we all know this, but my main point about this alternative summit is that it's important that we have more of these events. It's important that we have much deeper cooperation, because those guys on the right are very good at cooperating and very good at collaboration. That's why they're meeting. That's why we have NATO having these conferences. We need to continue to have these alternative events and to start continue winning the hearts and minds of the ordinary people across Europe and in this country, which I think we are beginning to win. So I want to commend the organisers, and I'm very pleased to have been invited and be part of this fantastic event. Good morning.